LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the October 1st edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've picked out the weekend's 20 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really informative, educational, media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight that fits into the fair use exception to copyright restrictions in the federal law. The two political comedy sources I will start off before I get to the real news clips. I'll have clips from the premiere of Saturday Night Live last night, including Alec Baldwin reprising his role as Donald Trump in Donald Trump versus Puerto Rico, which is the first big topic. I'll have a few clips at the end on what may end up being a more important topic for the fate of the Trump presidency, depending on how Puerto Rico turns out, which is the big tax plan that Trump introduced this week. That's like 4 clips at the end. Almost all the other clips are on the Trump versus Puerto Rico issue. I also have a clip from Bill Maher's monologue on HBO's Real Time on Friday, where he was satirizing Trump's response to Puerto Rico. And that's really the big issue, and I guess I'll get right to the first clip. Like I said, it's Alec Baldwin playing, well, it starts with Alec Baldwin as Donald Trump, but before that is Melissa Villaseñor, who is playing the Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz of San Juan, Puerto Rico, who got in this big fight with Donald Trump. Donald Trump attacked her on Twitter as nasty and also attacked Puerto Ricans as unwilling to help themselves. And that was, you'll see that in the news clips, but you'll also see it first satirized by Saturday Night Live over in this clip.
Yes, Mr. President, I'm so glad to have you on the phone. I'm begging you. Puerto Rico needs your help.
I hear you loud and clear, and you called the best person for the job. Trust me, I know things are, as the locals say, despacito. We're going to get you more help to you. We'll get you immediately, probably by Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest.
Mr. President, that's not good enough.
Well, you should have paid your bills. FEMA takes a few days unless you join FEMA Prime.
What are you talking about?
Ma'am, I don't know if you know this, but you're in an island in the water. The ocean water, big ocean, with fishies and bubbles and turtles that bite. We want to help you, but we have to take care of America first.
Wait, you do know we're a U.S. territory, don't you?
I mean, I do, but not many people know that, no.
Sir, we just need help, please.
Wow, that woman was so nasty.
Mr. President, I gotta be honest, this is only gonna get way worse.
I like you, Sarah. You're a straight shooter. That's why you've outlasted Sean Spicer, Scaramucci, Bannon, Priebus, Gorka, Flynn, Yates, and Tom Price.
Thank you, sir. I think it's because folks listen to me, because I'm no nonsense, but I'm all nonsense.
Well, you handled that NFL thing just great.
Oh, well, I'm a little embarrassed that I said it's a black and white issue. I should have said it's a black versus white issue.
It's disgraceful. You know, I actually love football. I could have played. People say I remind them of an NFL player because I'm combative, I like to win, and I might have a degenerative brain disease.
Might have a degenerative brain disease is one of the things that one of the mediators of our culture here in the United States, Saturday Night Live, with Alec Baldwin in his Emmy Award-winning role as Donald Trump, coming back for the premiere of the new season, is showing some of the ways that Donald Trump is not looking good in his reaction to Puerto Rico. They even downplayed the criticism from the mayor of Puerto Rico, which you'll see in some of the news clips later. My favorite part of that is actually the Sarah Huckabee Sanders impression by Aidy Bryant, where she says, I think people like me because I'm no nonsense, but all nonsense. And I watch a lot of the press briefings, and I think that's an incredibly apt description of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I also thought there was at least one insightful point from Bill Maher in the midst of a bunch of jokes in his monologue on this. I actually cut out some of the jokes. I couldn't even take his tax reform jokes because they were just too blue, too smutty for my very G-rated channel that should definitely be monetized. But by the way, if you want to see that whole Alec Baldwin impression, there's a link down in the video description. He goes on to explain why it's all part of his chaos strategy right after the clip I showed. And then there's also like a Jeff Sessions impression from Kate McKinnon that's worth seeing, and a Chuck Schumer impression from, I think it's Alex Moffat, one of like the less seen players. And by the way, also down in the video description are links to almost all the sources of my clips: the Saturday Night Live channel on YouTube, the Real Time with Bill Maher channel from HBO on YouTube. Also a link down to my clip list of my 20 clips and one still image, and the notes that I'm using to sort of guide myself along the way. If you want to look at those, you can look at those. But before I get to another Saturday Night Live clip, Michael Che's kind of rant against Donald Trump from the Weekend Update segment, I want to show Bill Maher also satirizing Donald Trump and making one insightful comment that I will comment on after we watch that 45-second clip from Real Time with Bill Maher, the monologue, which is also available in full on YouTube after we watch together here.
I'm very sensitive about this because, you know, they're saying the relief efforts there are a disaster, which is very unfair. He's tweeting as hard as he can. No, he will get on it as soon as he finds out that they speak Spanish and can come here anytime they like. Then, Trump says, of course he cares about Puerto Rico because he's from New York. That's what he says. Know them? I've evicted them. No, he is going to head down there to Puerto Rico as soon as someone from his cabinet frees up a plane. You know, this...
And actually, in support of the Trump chaos theory from the Saturday Night Live cold open clip I showed at the beginning, the fact that what Bill Maher was referring to there at the end about his administration officials using all these private charter planes, that actually led to the resignation of his Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price this week, and that was covered a little bit with some questions to a couple of administration officials, but it was a fairly minor story on the Sunday news programs, and that, I think, it supports the chaos theory that Trump is doing all these things that are you know, he's creating so many news stories all the time, the NFL and his feud with the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and his feud with Little Rocket Man in North Korea. That actually flared up again. You know, there's so much stuff going on that the real scandals sometimes get underplayed, like Tom Price racking up almost $1 million in charter plane flights and military plane flights. But I also, like I said, before I get to the real news clips, I want to show one more political comedy clip from Saturday Night Live. This is from Weekend Update. Michael Che talking about the feud between Donald Trump and Puerto Rico. And at the beginning, I have to say, I think there's a little bit of misogyny, which I will explain further after we watch the clip. Though I've seen some conservatives claim that there's reverse racism against white people in this clip as well, which I don't think is really true. And this is about a minute long. We can discuss it together after we watch it together here.
After the mayor of San Juan criticized the government's Puerto Rican relief efforts, President Trump attacked her on Twitter, saying the mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, has now been told by the Democrats that you must be nasty to Trump. Oh, really, Donald? You bitch. Was she nasty to you? How nasty? Are you shaking? You want to go smoke a Virginia Slim until your hand stops moving? This isn't that complicated, man. It's hurricane relief. These people need help. You just did this for white people twice. Do the same thing. Go tell Melania to put on her flood heels, get some bottled water, some food, pack up some extra Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl t-shirts, and write them a check with our money, you cheap cracker. You've mishandled Puerto Rico, DACA, the NFL. It's like whenever anybody darker than your golf pants has a problem, you're thinking, how can I make this worse?
I like several of those jokes. I like the anyone darker than the golf pants joke. And I realized I forgot to make one comment about the Bill Maher clip before that. But The misogyny in that last clip, if if it bothers you, is of course denigrating Donald Trump by calling him a bitch and saying his hand shakes because he wants a while he's smoking a stereotypically female cigarette, that, denigrating him because has stereotypical characteristics of women. Whatever. It's not like I don't enjoy watching Saturday Night Live, despite occasionally seeing these sort of feminist social analyses or whatever. Does it ruin the joke? You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And what I forgot to say about the insight from Bill Maher in the previous clip is he talked about how, Donald Trump is really going to care about Puerto Rico when he finds out they speak Spanish and they can move here whenever they want. And that's like one step away from the real political impact, I think, of this Puerto Rico situation could be in Florida, where there's already a substantial Puerto Rican population. And the thing is, Puerto Ricans are not only U.S. citizens. When they live in Puerto Rico, they don't get representation in the Congress or in the presidential election, but they can move to Florida or New York or wherever at any time. There's no immigration because they're U.S. citizens, and then all of a sudden they can vote in Florida if they want to, and that could have a real impact on Trump's electoral chances in 2020 if he really annoys a lot of Puerto Ricans. And that's kind of what's going on. And the one program that kind of put this in the context of all the troubles that Donald Trump had in the last week was Meet the Press on NBC. Chuck Todd did this introduction that was a little under 2 minutes, where he talked about how this could be Donald Trump's worst week, in history. We may look back, that's the whole, this is Donald Trump's Katrina moment, possibly, and that was kind of the take you saw from NBC's Meet the Press, or at least the question they asked in the introduction from Chuck Todd this morning, which I will discuss with you after we watch it together over here.
When the history of the Trump presidency is written, we may look back at this week as one of the worst for this president. Consider. His Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tom Price, had to resign over his free spending on charter flights. His latest effort to repeal and replace Obamacare went belly up without a vote. This week's tax reform rollout seems to have focused more on what it does for corporations and the wealthy, and it's unclear what it does for the working class and the poor. Alabama Republicans defied the president by nominating insurgent Roy Moore over Mr. Trump's pick of the establishment. But the biggest story of all may wind up being what's happening right now in Puerto Rico. The mayor of the capital, San Juan, unloaded on the administration's response to the disaster there.
So I am done being polite. I am done being politically correct. I am mad as hell. We are dying. And you are killing us with the inefficiency and the bureaucracy.
President Trump responded with a series of tweets yesterday, including this one. Such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan and others in Puerto Rico who are not able to get their workers to help. They want everything to be done for them when it should be a community effort. 10,000 federal workers now on island doing a fantastic job. Tammy Leitner, my colleague at NBC News, asked Mayor Cruz if she felt Mr. Trump was personally attacking her.
I don't care. He can attack me all he wants. Bring it on. I'm here. You know what? If it saves lives, because it gets the message in the right place, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
So let's get a reality check.
So that's the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, who got in this big feud with Donald Trump. You saw there are a couple, that was a clip of her from Saturday, and I'll actually show a clip of her from this morning on This Week with George Stephanopoulos in a few minutes, but I was pointing out that the Meet the Press clip there on NBC was the only one that really emphasized the possibility of the Katrina moment in the introductory clip, and especially saying this could be the worst week in Donald Trump's presidency. But it was more of a question there, and to emphasize how much it was just a question asked, in the next 3-minute clip here, they have their NBC has Chuck Todd first introduces the reporter Ron Mott and asks him, who's right in this whole controversy between President Donald Trump and the Mayor Cruz of San Juan, Puerto Rico. And as is the way that cable news and a lot of news likes to do it. They try to do a whole sort of both sides. You know, nobody is completely correct. It's somewhere in the middle, and I don't know if that's really true. There's one part of this that I think is the real decisive part, which is the fact that the 3-star General Buchanan just showed up. Was it on Thursday or Friday? And he himself said that he didn't have enough troops and equipment to deal with the situation, and that's sort of embedded in this report from Ron Mott, which I will discuss with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Let's get a reality check here. Ron Mott is standing by for us in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And Ron, we have this war of words between the president and the mayor of San Juan. You're there. Tell us the state of the recovery efforts.
Yeah, hey there, Chuck. You know, when you have an argument like this, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle, and I suspect that that's the case here in Puerto Rico. Things are not clearly as rosy as perhaps the president and the administration would have people believe. There is aid here, there's no doubt about that. And on the flip side, things are probably not as dire as the mayor made it sound the other night, that the administration, in effect, is killing people down here. People have died, obviously, but making the connection between people dying and lack of aid and food and water here, that's probably a debatable point. But I can tell you this, Chuck. I've covered a lot of these storms and the aftermath of these storms. Life here is very, very hard. It is bad. There's no question about that. But that is the usual case after a major hurricane like Puerto Rico experienced with Maria. The thing is that we have not seen here is usually 11 days out, as we are at this point after Maria, you see a lot more infrastructure in place, supplies, runs down the highway, convoys of military officials. We're not quite seeing that. Yesterday I saw one electric line truck yesterday, and there was no one up in a cherry picker putting a line back up. So let me set the scene for you and what these folks are dealing with 11 days out. 95% of the island still in the dark. It is hot. It is still hot here in the tropics, 80s, upper 80s with high humidity. Yesterday it rained all day, so conditions here are miserable for people trying to get by day to day, and that's how they're living down here, and in some cases hour by hour. There are lines everywhere you see, Chuck. Lines to get gas, lines to get food, lines to get water, lines to get cash, lines to get into the grocery store, also to the drugstore. They're dealing with lines. People are spending considerable parts of their day standing in line trying to get some need met, and in some cases they get to the point where they are told there's no more gas. And so you can imagine how frustrating that is. It's enough to make a grown man or grown woman cry. So they are desperate down here in many cases. I spoke to a retired police officer, lost his house, staying next door with his parents. They've got about a day, maybe 2 days worth of food left. He says nobody has come to their neighborhood.
Ron, what is the bigger issue here? Supplies or distributing the supplies?
It's the distribution. We sat at the port yesterday. There was a lot of activity at the port. They were unloading a barge, container after container coming off the barge, but there aren't truckers sitting there waiting for these containers to be connected to their rig so they can get them out. Now, FEMA did say that it has already distributed 2.5 million liters of water here, 2 million pounds of food. We can't dispute any of that, but we can tell you that that port is not there's not a convoy of containers leaving that port going out into the communities with all these relief supplies. A lot of the stuff at the port, now we can tell you this, was not hurricane relief stuff. These are goods that have been regularly scheduled to come down here. The truckers just can't get here. There's a little bit of silver lining perhaps coming tomorrow. Crowley, which is one of the big carriers there, says that they are expecting a delivery, a major delivery of fuel tomorrow that is going to be met with a lot of applause here.
All right, Ron Mott.
So there were some interesting parts of that NBC report from Ron Mott. He talked about how there were a lot of the supplies that were sitting there and couldn't be distributed were actually stuff that was supposed to go into the commercial supply chain, and I think I saw a story later that FEMA had bought up a lot of those supplies and was trying to get them out. But what they didn't really touch on was the military aspect. Actually, I have this still frame from last Friday's MSNBC show Deadline White House that compares the amount of military assets deployed to Puerto Rico in the first several days after. You can see within days of disaster, the Haiti earthquake, which that's not the United States or territory, that's not U.S. citizens, that they had more military ships, a lot more helicopters, and a lot more troops. This is from last Friday. From what I understand, since Buchanan got there, they've actually gone up to 10,000 troops. But I think that is the real deficit in the Trump response, as far as I've been able to understand from my view of many different news sources, that, you know, because there are all these blocked roads, what they need are a lot of helicopters to get stuff out while the roads are blocked, and then a lot of troops to both set up the U.S. military can set up a cellular network, anywhere. They can set up, so that people can connect to the internet from their cell phones. They can also string electrical wires, and they can also unblock blocked roads, and that's what they need, the helicopters and the troops to deal with, helicopters to get stuff out there while the roads are blocked, and then troops to help with the lack of anyone to distribute the goods that are sitting in the docks. And anyway, I don't think NBC did a good job of showing that, and they did at least show the feud between Donald Trump and the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is better than Fox News Sunday did, as I'll show in a few minutes, and also Face the Nation didn't do a good job of that. Over on State of the Union, Jake Tapper started off the show with the State of the Union being desperation, and then talking about the feud between Donald Trump and the mayor of Puerto Rico, and even highlighting the fact that Donald Trump was tweeting from his golf course, which of course makes it even more despicable, as I think is sort of pointed out in this little over a minute clip from CNN's State of the Union this morning over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is desperation. At least that's the state of the union among many of our fellow American citizens in Puerto Rico, millions remaining hungry and thirsty and without power. FEMA and other government agencies are working hard to provide relief, but in too many places on the island, it's not getting there fast enough or in large enough supply. President Trump this morning launching more Twitter attacks against anyone who points this out, writing, quote, "We have done a great job with the almost impossible situation in Puerto Rico outside of the fake news or politically motivated ingrates. People are now starting to recognize the amazing work that has been done by FEMA and our great military. All buildings now inspected for safety. Thank you to the governor of Puerto Rico and to all those who are working so closely with our first responders. Fantastic job," unquote. The president, from the comfort of his golf resort in Bedminster, New Jersey, has also been attacking the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, Carmen Cruz, calling her nasty and questioning her leadership, saying she and others in Puerto Rico, quote, "want everything to be done for them when it should be a community effort," unquote. She responded directly to the president in an interview with CNN.
I don't know, maybe he's used to women who have to be told what to do. That's not who we are here in San Juan.
President Trump will...
And good for Mayor Cruz there, going after Donald Trump for misogyny, because it's always like women and women of color that he seems to have the most trouble with, and I think that you'll see that Donald, that's my opinion. You can let me know what you think about your opinion of Donald Trump's misogyny down, oh no, Donald Trump, are there people who actually don't think Donald Trump is misogynist? I'm actually going to talk about him being white supremacist before I get to the end of this topic. I have a Ta-Nehisi Coates clip, and you can see, right here I have Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me. That's a really great book. I recommend anyone should read that. And I actually just bought his new book that he was promoting when he was on Meet the Press. But that's actually the last clip in this topic, or the second to last clip in this topic. Before I get to that, I want to criticize Fox News Sunday for not showing what you just heard from Jake Tapper in just a very short clip. But he covered the fact that Donald Trump attacked the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, calling her nasty, and then attacking her leadership, which is the one thing that Fox News Sunday covered, and then also saying that that she and the people of Puerto Rico wanted everything done for them and wouldn't help themselves, and that was totally missed on the Fox News Sunday coverage. Also, Face the Nation didn't cover it for some reason, but here you can see the introduction from Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace, where he very quickly summarizes what's going on with the feud between Donald Trump and the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and cuts out the things that I think make Donald Trump look the worst in this 40-second clip over here.
In Washington, President Trump travels to Puerto Rico Tuesday to see the devastation from Hurricane Maria firsthand. And it could get awkward, because this weekend the president picked fights with officials there over recovery efforts. Since the storm hit 11 days ago, much of the island has been without power, communications, and critical infrastructure. San Juan's mayor says people are dying because of the slow federal response. But the president accused the mayor and other local officials of poor leadership. In a moment, we'll discuss relief efforts with FEMA Administrator Brock Long. But
and I'm actually about to show that Brock Long clip because I just criticized the Fox News Sunday clip for not talking about how basically Donald Trump called Puerto Ricans lazy for not wanting to help themselves and called the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico nasty. And that really never got covered except, I think, finally when they got to their panel discussion, the Democrat on the panel, Representative Donna Edwards, mentioned the lazy thing, but it was nowhere in their news coverage. And the closest Chris Wallace got to mentioning it was in this questioning of Brock Long, the director of FEMA, who I always thought, is that his porn name? I don't know. Brock Long, you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. But here you'll see the FEMA director actually tries to take Donald Trump's side and criticizes the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico for not attending the the joint priorities meetings that FEMA's holding in Puerto Rico or whatever. But there is a point where Chris Wallace questions the FEMA director about Donald Trump's tweets, and he compares the numbers of them about Puerto Rico to the NFL and then specifically quotes a tweet, but not the stuff about being lazy, as I will discuss with you after we watch that clip together over here.
Let's start with the disconnect between what the Trump administration is saying and what the situation on the ground in Puerto Rico seems to be. Here is the acting head of the Department of Homeland Security on Thursday and the mayor of San Juan on Friday.
It is really a good news story in terms of our ability to reach people and the limited number of deaths that have taken place in such a devastating hurricane.
Damn it, this is not a good news story. This is a people are dying story. This is a life or death story.
With millions of people clearly still struggling, as we just saw in Mike Tobin's report, is it a mistake for folks in Washington to say this is a good news story?
You know what? I'm just going to say that I think the Secretary's words are being taken out of context. Look, we're not going to be satisfied until the situation is stabilized. And the bottom line is that this is the most logistically challenging event the United States has ever seen. And we have been moving and pushing as fast as the situation allows. Every day we make progress. Every day we have some setbacks. For example, you don't just bring the commodities in. You have to be able to pump them down the roadway systems that we have been working desperately to get open. We've opened up 11 major highways, but this morning there are over 3,200 different problems reported with the roadway systems, from bridges missing to road being blocked by floodwaters to roads just disappeared because of landslides. So we're having to work through all that. Not only do we have enough commodities and a massive amount of commodities coming in every day, we've also established 11 regional distribution hubs to where we have great communication with 77 mayors within Puerto Rico, where we're operating with the governor and those mayors in unified command to be able to coordinate the dissemination of these commodities. And it's not only the commodities that we're having to push forward. We're also having to work with the private sector to get them back up to speed, because this response depends far more than what FEMA can do. And the bottom line is that we're trying to get the private sector in and up and running. Over half the grocery stores, according to Governor Rosselló, and retailers are beginning to operate now at a baseline level. Over 300 pharmacies are beginning to operate over a baseline level. These are signs that routine is coming back and that progress is being made. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely, we have a long way to go.
I want to pick up on something you just said, because I'd not heard this before. You say this is the most logistically challenging relief effort ever in the history of this country. If I may, I just want to pick up on this, and the president in particular. Between September 19th, the day before Hurricane Maria hit, and last Sunday, he sent 2 tweets on Puerto Rico and 12 on sports and the controversy over the national anthem. And yesterday, after Mayor Cruz complained about the response, the president tweets this: the mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, has now been told by Democrats that you must be nasty to Trump. Such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan and others in Puerto Rico who are not able to get their workers to help. I know you don't have much patience for this politics, but frankly, it was the president who started talking politics.
Right. So what I don't have patience for is the fact that what we're trying to do and what we have successfully done is we've established a joint field office within San Juan. And you should go there. You should go see that operation where we're having daily conversations with all the mayors. We're working with the governor and his leadership to be able to create unified objectives. If mayors decide not to be a part of that, then the response is fragmented. And the bottom line is that we're pushing everybody.
Let me ask you directly,
push her in there.
I was going to say, is Mayor Cruz not participating in the FEMA effort?
You know, there was a good article that aired this morning in the Washington Examiner, and Mayor Otero out of Guaynabo, if I'm not pronouncing that correct, is basically saying, look, there's been excellent communication with not only the governor, but also FEMA and the way that we're trying to tackle this. You know, we can choose to look at what the mayor spouts off or what other people spout off, but we can also choose to see what's actually being done. And that's what I would ask.
So you can see in that clip there, the FEMA director, Brock Long, claims that the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, hasn't attended any of the meetings of this joint priority task force, and he'll amend that same attack a little later, which I'll show in a clip after I show a clip of that mayor. But I'm not through with my news summaries of what's going on here. You know, I showed the NBC news summary, how they first put it in the context of possibly Trump having his worst week, his Katrina moment that history will remember, and then had their news person sort of investigate whether Trump was right or the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico was right. And then I showed CNN State of the Union, where Jake Tapper emphasized the whole golf thing, and also showed all the tweets. And then on Fox News Sunday, they barely got to what the real substance of Donald Trump's attacks. Didn't talk about calling the Puerto Rican people lazy or calling the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico nasty. And I want to contrast that finally with the George Stephanopoulos introduction on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And then I will actually follow that with his interview with the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico. But first, here's the introduction, where I think ABC covers all the relevant tweets, at least, and, you know, the nastiness between Donald Trump and the mayor of San Juan over here.
For this week, President Trump got some pretty high marks for how he's handled this devastating hurricane season. On the scene in Houston after Harvey, Florida after Irma, earning praise from local officials and a bit of a bounce in his approval ratings. Then came Maria's cataclysmic hit on Puerto Rico, a Category 4 storm that destroyed so much of the island. For days, the president was silent. He played catch-up much of this week. And Saturday morning, this storm on Twitter. The mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, has now been told by the Democrats, you must be nasty to Trump. Such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan and others in Puerto Rico who are not able to get their workers to help. They want everything to be done for them when it should be a community effort. No president has ever unleashed a public attack like that during a natural disaster. The backlash has been swift and ferocious, including this defense of the mayor from the creator of Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda. She's been working 24/7. You've been golfing. You're going straight to hell. Fastest golf cart you ever took. We'll hear from the president's FEMA administrator, Brock Long, in a moment. First, the president's...
And I'm going to show that Brock Long clip in a moment also, but before they get to it, George Stephanopoulos also interviewed the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico. And, you know, actually, before I get to that, I have to say, I think that ABC summary that was just a little over 1 minute long was so much better than what you saw on Fox News Sunday, because it had all of the relevant text from the tweets, even had Lin-Manuel Miranda added at the end there to tell Donald Trump that he's going to hell, that and talking about the golfing, just like CNN did. And I don't know why there hasn't been more attention paid to how much Donald Trump is golfing, especially, you know, while the American people suffer in many of these. I mean, the American people are suffering, and they're apparently they're going to be suffering more and more under Donald Trump based on his performance as president. And before I get to, like I said, before I get to the FEMA Director Brock Long clip that responds to what the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico said, I have to show the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico talking to George Stephanopoulos, where I think George Stephanopoulos does a pretty good job of cross-examining her on where the problem really lies. And she also talks about what the three-star general who finally got there on Thursday or Friday confirmed, that there's just not enough military troops and equipment, which I will talk about again after we watch that clip together here.
San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz. Mayor, thank you for joining us this morning. Your reaction to the president?
Well, first of all, Mr. Stephanopoulos, there's only one goal, and it's saving lives. So any dialogue that goes on just has to be able to produce results. And all I did last week, or even this week, was ask for help. It has to happen in a sustained manner. It has to happen quickly. And mayors all over Puerto Rico are getting to the supply areas and been told, look, call us a few days later. People are being told to register via internet for FEMA relief when we don't have any internet or very little internet, even in the San Juan metropolitan area. I recognize the good heart that the FEMA people have. They want to help, but they just don't have the resources. And it's not me who's saying it. General Buchanan, a three-star general, appointed now to take care of the situation, said 2 days ago, we just don't have the resources in order to handle the logistical support that is needed in San Juan and Puerto Rico. But we have done all that we can. People are out there, they're cleaning the streets, community kitchens are coming up, and we are getting tons of donations. On Thursday, I got 3 pallets of water, 4 pallets of food, and 4 pallets of baby supplies from FEMA. All of this I gave to the mayor of Comerío, a town whose mayor had come to the FEMA distribution center and had been told, just wait until next Monday because we have nothing.
You know, the president...
And on go stories of mayors.
The president's FEMA director has suggested you're not really plugged in. Yesterday he said you need to make your way to the Joint Field Office and get plugged into what's going on. Have you been to the Joint Field Office, and if not, why not?
Well, number one, I got a call from the White House a couple of days ago. I think it was Thursday. Mr. Bossert took it upon himself to call, and I was very glad that he called. He seemed to be a very prone action, a guy that does what he says and says what he does. So we got appointed a FEMA coordinator. We have 2 people that are appointed to San Juan. We are the capital city. We are the largest city in Puerto Rico with the most amount of population. And we got appointed just direct links. So actually, I was in FEMA the couple of days afterwards. When they were at the San Juan Marriott, I was invited to visit, and we had been communicating ever since. Things have to be done on a sustained manner. If I only get, for a population of 350,000, where perhaps half of them are in need of food and water, sustained supplies, then, you know, I get 4 pallets of food, 3 pallets of water. That's really not even going to provide for a dent. The supply chain of aid has to be sustained, and we have the logistics in order to do that.
Will you meet with...
People from my administration have been to the COI. Yes.
Will you meet with the president on Tuesday, and what do you want him to see?
So she's saying there that people from her administration are going to that joint priority thing. I think that's what she said at the end there, and that she's been there. And I'm going to show the FEMA director, Brock Long, responding to that in just a second. Although I was reading the live comments along the way, and one of the things I forgot to say about the Fox News Sunday clip, where they contrasted the claim from the acting director of the acting secretary of Department of Homeland Security. They contrasted her statement that, you know, that Puerto Rico was a good news story with the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico there, Mayor Cruz, saying that it was not a good news story. One of the problems that the Trump administration is having, I noticed, was pointed out along the way by NO8549, they're saying that when is there going to be a real Director of Homeland Security? Of course, the Director of Homeland Security, John Kelly, General John Kelly, has become the Chief of Staff, and so that's an opening that has to be filled. Now, of course, the Secretary of the Secretary of Homeland Security has to be filled. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department now has to be filled since Tom Price had to resign. So they're like resigning faster than there's so many positions that still need to be filled in the Trump administration. That's a really good point that I forgot to make when I showed that previous clip. So I'm glad that my live commenters are here to help me remember the things I forget. And the next clip I want to show is actually, like I said, the FEMA director Brock Long kind of responding to what the mayor of Puerto Rico said there. You saw Brock Long over on Fox News Sunday earlier claiming, well, she's never been to our Joint Priority Task Force office. And then after that last clip, he says, well, maybe she's been there once, and then doesn't really respond to the fact that she says members of her administration are actually hooked into that whole process. And it doesn't really address the real problem I've been talking about before, that there's just not enough military troops and equipment, especially given the situation. But I will talk about that with you a little more after we watch that Brock Long clip under cross-examination from George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week This Morning over here.
San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz. Mayor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Oop, that's the clip I just showed. Sorry, here's the correct clip.
This morning, you just heard the mayor talk about her situation right there. Do you think, as the president wrote yesterday, she's demonstrated poor leadership? And down in Puerto Rico, have you encountered anyone who's asked for everything to be done for them?
So the success of a disaster response is predicated on unity of command. And the bottom line is, just a few minutes ago, we had a press conference from the Joint Field Office in San Juan. That operation has hundreds of people in it working around the clock to set the strategic objectives, not only FEMA, DOD, but also the governor's objectives. And we've been working with mayors all around Puerto Rico to make sure that we have a strategy and that we've been executing that strategy going forward. The unfortunate aspect is that we've tried to embed my staff, with the mayor, and I think she just answered the question. I think if I just heard correctly, she's been there once. This is an operation that has to take place all the time. She does have access to commodities. We've established 11 regional distribution hubs, not distribution points, but hubs where there are large quantities of commodities and food. And what we're doing is that we had to set up a foundational baseline capability to be able to get, commodities to the jurisdictions. And in many cases, the mayors are stepping up and driving in to get their commodities and going back. Mayor Otero, right outside of San Juan, in the city of Guayanado, has been very pleased with what we've been doing and the strategy that we've been executing, and so are many of the mayors. The problem is if you're not connected into that joint field office, then you don't understand commander's intent, you don't understand the successes of what's been done versus what needs to be done, where the gaps are. And, George, the bottom line is that, our guys have been working 42 days now across Texas, Florida, both islands, and we're going to continue to push forward. We're not satisfied until the situation is stabilized and sustained. We push everything into that island that we can, and it's not just pushing everything in, it's getting it distributed, but we're also having to do a majority of the work because of diminished capacity at the local level. They got a hard hit. They had 2 hurricanes in 10 weeks, 2 major hurricanes in 10 weeks. So it's not only just getting food out. We had over 3,200 different problems with the roadway network that were reported, where bridges have been wiped out, where flooding has taken out the roads. So just being able to push commodities down these arteries has been tough enough.
And we've also seen the mayor out there in the water as well. She just said she thought FEMA's heart was in the right place. They're starting to cut through the red tape right now. Do you really think the Puerto Ricans haven't been pulling their weight?
Oh, I believe the Puerto Ricans are pulling their weight. I mean, I think they're doing what they can. The bottom line is the question is that a local mayor's job is to push commander's intent down to his or her troops. And in many cases, that commander's intent from a mayor down to their troops has to be aligned with what the governor's priorities are, as well as FEMA. That's called joint priorities. And the bottom line is that we're not only fixing roadway networks, we're doing emergency power, we're getting fuel to hospitals. We've opened up 700 gas stations. The private sector grocery retail industry has come up to about 50%, as I understand it. Telecom's been turned on to a third of Puerto Rico, which is why we're asking people to try to call into the FEMA system, but also register across the line. But I also have disaster assistance employee teams that are inundating Puerto Rico, going door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood, to try to get people registered. And over the last 42 days, FEMA has registered nearly 3 million people for assistance from all of the disasters, starting with Harvey and over. The other complexity of what FEMA's facing is that yesterday we were involved in 20 states and 2 island territories helping people overcome disasters and manage through the recovery process. The complexity of this job and the Herculean effort by these people, behind me and the federal government has been incredible.
You all have faced an incredible challenge over this last month. There's no question about that at all. Is everything on track now in Puerto Rico?
So I have to agree with George Stephanopoulos there at the end that FEMA has a tough job, although, that's why they have that job, and they're supposed to be ready for whatever the disasters are. And I thought there that the FEMA director, Brock Long, he kind of tried to defend Donald Trump. He didn't say that the people of Puerto Rico aren't willing to help themselves, but he did sort of continue his attack there on the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, Mayor Cruz, about not attending these meetings or not embedding FEMA people into the administration of the mayor of San Juan. Or, you heard it, and I don't know if that's accurate, but like I said, I think the real criticism of the Trump administration response is not having more military assets there more quickly, based on what I've been saying so far. And I do, in this information that I showed before, I have a couple more administration officials who try their best to defend the president's position, but can't really defend him attacking this, the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, while she's like wading through sewage and trying to save people's lives, and he's calling her nasty and calling the people, of Puerto Rico, or at least some of them, ingrates. And anyway, so I'm going to show 2 administration officials, the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, and then the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney. And I'll follow that. We can clean our palates with a couple people on the left. First, Senator Bernie Sanders, and then, of course, Ta-Nehisi Coates, the author of Between the World and Me, one of the books I have right behind me. But first, Steve Mnuchin and Mick Mulvaney. Steve Mnuchin being questioned over on NBC's Meet the Press, not really being able to defend the president very well, I don't think, over here.
To the original topic we were going to discuss, which is the new tax reform plan you guys rolled out. I got to ask you about a couple things. Maybe you can clarify, as somebody who serves in the president's cabinet. What did he mean by this idea that Puerto Rico wants everything done for them? What did he mean by that, and why was the president appeared to be so angry in his tweets yesterday morning?
Well, let me first say we very much appreciate the difficulty of what's going on there. The devastation has obviously been very, very difficult, and the president and the entire administration, the entire cabinet, are very much focused on this. I've personally been involved in many aspects of this. I've been working with Secretary Perry on the electrical system. We have put a priority to get the hospitals back up and running. We have electricity now to most of the hospitals. I've worked with the Federal Reserve on cash. You commented on issues with people getting cash in banks. We've literally sent in tens and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cash, making sure we get banks and ATMs open. And we're focused on food and water and everything else. This is something that is a very big focus of the president and the cabinet. We've been meeting almost daily on this.
Why does the president think Puerto Rico's not doing enough to help themselves?
Well, I think the federal government's role is working with the local government, and the governor's done a terrific job and will continue to work with him. This is something that's a partnership between the federal government getting resources to the state so that it can be distributed there.
Okay, you mentioned the governor, but you're not mentioning the mayor. Why did he attack the mayor? She's in a situation, a pretty desperate situation, and seemed to lack a little bit of empathy for the situation at the time. Why did he do this?
Well, I think, as you know, when the president gets attacked, he attacks back. And I think the mayor's comments were unfair given what the federal government has done. But again, this is really about the focus should be...
How do you know they were unfair? Is that fair to say? Have you been down there?
I haven't been down there.
I mean, is it unfair? I mean, it's you know, I remember going through Hurricane Andrew. When you're in this moment a week or so later and you still don't have power, you know, the president himself tweeted a week after Sandy hit, where it's outrageous that power isn't on. People do get frustrated.
Again, I completely understand people's frustration, and this is a very, very difficult situation. I haven't been there, but I've been almost on daily calls, monitoring what's going on with the rest of the cabinet. I think FEMA's done a terrific job, given a very difficult situation, and we're doing everything we can to get resources to the governor so that they can be distributed. But I understand people's frustration on the island, and I can assure you the federal government's doing everything we can.
Does the president, it seemed as if yesterday his tone changed in Puerto Rico. Does the president regret attacking the mayor and the people of Puerto Rico yesterday morning?
I haven't spoken to the president about that, so I can't comment on it, but I don't think he was attacking the people. He understands that the people are going through a very difficult situation.
All right, let me move.
He was obviously attacking the people when he said that, you know, the Puerto Ricans want everything done for them. I mean, how else can you construe that comment? And the Steve Mnuchin defense there, you know, when the president gets attacked, he attacks back. That, I mean, I don't think it really cuts it. And I think Chuck Todd did a fairly good job there. I like the fact that he talked about Donald Trump's tweet after Sandy hit. And by the way, for the Sandy fans out there, my dog Sandy, I mean, I will have a bonus Sandy clip in between the two topics, as I've been trying to do weekly for the last several weeks, and I'm hoping to make a practice of. So if you're a Sandy fan, there will be a Sandy clip coming up in just a few minutes. But like I said, Chuck Todd did a good job of cross-examining Steve Mnuchin, and I don't like Steve Mnuchin's justification. You know, when he gets attacked, he attacks back, and he's not really attacking the Puerto Rican people when he obviously did. And Mick Mulvaney over on this is talking to Jake Tapper over on CNN's State of the Union. Jake Tapper asks a similar question. You know, what did Donald Trump mean when he said that they're, you know, they want everything done for them, or they're asking for everything to be done for them? And can you understand the anger? And Mick Mulvaney, he says, you know, what Donald Trump meant is they didn't expect it to be so bad. Everyone's surprised at how bad things are. And he also has a reference to the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, not really working with the joint FEMA task force, which I will discuss with you after we watch that clip together. Let me make sure that this is clip number 13 over here.
Good to see you. I know you want to talk about tax reform, but I do want to start with the humanitarian disaster unfolding in the American territory of Puerto Rico. The president has been attacking San Juan Mayor Yulín Cruz, tweeting such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan and others in Puerto Rico who are not able to get their workers to help. They want everything to be done for them when it should be a community effort. 10,000 federal workers now on island doing a fantastic job. What exactly does President Trump mean when he says they want everything to be done for them? Who's they, and what is the everything they want done for them?
I think what the president's trying to get at is that folks think this is going to be easy. They saw what happened in Texas, they saw what happened in Florida, and they thought, oh, this is easy to do. And it's not. This was an island that was absolutely devastated, not by one hurricane, but by two. I think it's 1,100 miles from the nearest mainland American port. This was always going to be harder, and we knew that, which is why we positioned assets on the island before the storm. It's why we have 10,000 people on the island right now. But I think it's possible that folks just said, oh, this will be easy, and they're surprised that it's taking as long as it is, and it's not going to be easy. It's never been easy. But we're doing things on Puerto Rico, Jake, that we didn't even do in Texas or Florida. We've actually given Puerto Rico more tools than we brought to bear in those other states because we had to, because of its location, because of the scope of the devastation. I think it's unfair to say that we haven't done everything we can, because we have done everything that we can and will continue to do so. It's unfortunate that the Puerto Rico mayor wants to, the San Juan mayor wants to sort of go against the grain. We'd love to have her on the team as we all pull in the same direction. My understanding is that as of yesterday, she had not even been to the FEMA Operations Center in her own city. So we need to get her involved along with the other 70-odd mayors on the island and the governor. Everybody's there. We'd love her to have her on the team as well.
I want to read you a passage from conservative writer Eric Erickson. who was dismayed at President Trump's tweets. He said, quote, "Yay, President Trump punched a critic who's on an island trying her best to help others where most of the people now have no homes and no power and no running water. What a man he is." He was being very critical, Eric Erickson, a conservative, of the fact that President Trump is punching down and attacking a mayor in the middle of a horrific humanitarian crisis. Can you understand why some Americans see these tweets from the president and feel revulsed?
I work in the Trump administration, Jake, and I've known from day one that there's folks who want to see this administration fail, that they look for opportunities to try and say, oh, look, they're not doing a great job. Judge us by the actions, please. Judge us by what's happening on the island. Judge us by the men and the women who have worked tirelessly. I was on a show earlier today with Brock Long, whose team I think has been working for 40 days straight now in the various storms since Harvey hit Texas more than a month ago. The outpouring of effort, the outpouring of work done by federal workers, by American citizens, by folks from all over the country. There's folks from almost every state, I think, in Puerto Rico helping right now. That's how we should measure the response to this storm, not by Mr. Erickson's comments.
Let me show you one last tweet from...
There was a moment there when Chuck Todd did that follow-up question with the radio talk show host Eric Erickson, quote, saying how people, you know, and then about the sarcastic thing, oh, yay, you're attacking this mayor who's in the middle of a disaster. And then Jake Tapper says, do you understand why many Americans here look at these tweets and they're revulsed? And Mick Mulvaney started, you know, I serve in the Trump administration. I thought for a minute there, I thought he was going to say, I serve in the Trump administration and I'm, you know, revulsed every single day. And he was going to break down and that was going to be a great moment. But of course it didn't happen. It was a defense of Donald Trump, not a very good defense. And like I said, he made that reference to the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, not visiting the FEMA office enough, which I don't know if she refuted that or added fire to that charge in the previous clip I showed, depending on how you parse what she said about going there once herself and sending members of her administration. But I don't think that's really the most important point. And then the whole idea that that, you know, people are angry, and Mick Mulvaney is saying that it, well, whatever. You can tell me what you think of that clip. I actually want to go on to the Democrats. The people are upset now. Mick Mulvaney was saying people are upset because they thought things were going to be easy. I don't know where that came from. But I have three people on the left. First, Senator Bernie Sanders, then the journalist and writer Tanehasi Coates, and finally the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, all talking about the way Donald Trump is treating the Puerto Ricans and what might be the reason for that. And I'll start with Senator Bernie Sanders on CNN's State of the Union talking to Jake Tapper over in this clip.
First, I want to ask you about Puerto Rico. What did you make of President Trump tweeting that Puerto Ricans, quote, want everything to be done for them?
You know, speaking from his fancy golf club, playing golf with his billionaire friends, attacking the mayor of San Juan, who is struggling to bring electricity to the island, food to the island, water to the island, gas to the island. That is just, it is unspeakable. And I don't know what world Trump is living in. People in Puerto Rico are suffering one of the worst disasters in the history of that island. We have got to do everything we can to help them. We all have got to remember the people of Puerto Rico are American citizens, entitled to the same help as the people of any other community in America.
The White House denies it, but there are a lot of critics who say that race or ethnicity might be playing a factor here. What do you think?
Well, look, given the president's history on race, given the fact that he, a few months ago, told us that there were good people on both sides when neo-Nazis were marching in Charlottesville, yeah, I think we have a right to be suspect that he is treating the people of Puerto Rico in a different way than he has treated the people of Texas or Florida.
Let's turn to the president's tax plan.
So that was a pretty sharp question there from Jake Tapper about white supremacy, although he didn't actually use the words white supremacy, but that's a topic I've been spending a lot of time studying recently, which I'm not going to really go into the reasons why so much. I talked about it weeks ago, I think. But one person who has spent a lot of time talking about white supremacy and talking about Donald Trump being the first white president in this great article in The Atlantic was Ta-Nehisi Coates. I keep getting this backwards. Oh yeah, here's his book, Between the World and Me, that I read a while back, and I just ordered his new book, which is like We Were in Charge for 8 Years. Is that the name of it? Something like that. Which is a bunch of essays from when Barack Obama was president. But in this next clip, this is even a more incisive analysis of white supremacy and the way Donald Trump is a white supremacist. Not just that might be why he's having problems with the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, but that's like really the raison d'etre or the defining characteristic of his presidency, according to Ta-Nehisi Coates talking to Chuck Todd, who, to his credit, gives airtime to Ta-Nehisi Coates to make this argument on Meet the Press this morning over here.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think he would be here without white supremacy?
No, no.
Explain that.
Well, I think it's pretty easy. I mean, you have a political candidate who literally begins his presence or his campaign in birtherism. That was how it started. I don't think birtherism was a mistake, and it wasn't a minority-held opinion. It wasn't a small minority-held opinion within the Republican Party. I mean, you had 8 years of an African-American president, and if not majority to at least plurality to the Republican Party believed that Barack Obama was not legitimate because he was not born here. And Donald Trump saw that, played on that, and that was how he launched his campaign. I just don't think that was a mistake. And he's continued with that all the way through. You have a president who had no problem going on TV saying someone can't judge me, a federal judge can't judge my case because he's a Mexican. It doesn't get much more explicit than that.
Solely a reaction to the election of Barack Obama? No. Do you think do we get Donald Trump without Barack Obama as president?
I don't think so. I don't think without that reaction. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't other factors contributing to, the Trump presidency ultimately. I would argue that white supremacy is an indispensable factor, which does not mean there weren't other factors that were there too. But I think if you take that out, no. I don't think it's a mistake that we've never had a president who's never held political office or never, been had a military posting or anything at all. No experience within the public sphere at all. To just hand it off like that, I think Trump is different. He's not Marco Rubio. He's not Mitt Romney. This is a very, very different thing. And I think 50 years from now, historians are going to ask themselves how this actually happened. And I think the answer is going to be the reaction to Barack Obama's presidency.
What was interesting is you share a moment. You were with President Obama a few days before the election in 2016, and neither one of you believed Donald Trump was going to win. And then after the fact, you admitted you couldn't believe you thought that.
Yeah.
What's funny about this, the reason I bring this up,
I
can't tell you
in myself.
how many African Americans before in 2008 would say to me, he can't win.
Yeah. And
so it's interesting how this has happened.
Well, I think the hard thing to believe is not so much the out-and-out racism and bigotry and sexism and et cetera and Islamophobia that was represented by Trump. There is a lack of, excuse my blunt terms, white self-interest in this, that you have a president who is effectively conducting diplomacy, nuclear diplomacy, through tweeting. You would think like, there's a line where it says, okay, I'm not going to endanger myself in this way. And that was proven to not be true. That was the shocking part.
I want to ask you something.
That's a really interesting point at the end, that white people are like voting against their self-interest so much. I mean, that goes back to the what's the matter with Kansas thing, that some white people vote against their self-interest, but the idea that white people are voting against their self-interest by electing someone who's incompetent as president, and as to where that's going to turn out, I don't know what's going on with North Korea, and that's one of the things I don't like to think about the Trump administration, that we have at least a couple more, at least until there's a Democratic House of Representatives that can impeach him, and many members of the Senate who think he's too dangerous to leave in the presidency, or that is sort of a pipe dream, really, to get rid of Donald Trump. Maybe he'll resign because he just gets frustrated. That almost seems as likely. And well, I asked several weeks ago whether viewers thought that Donald Trump would continue being the president all the way through his first term, and I don't know whether he will or not. I mean, he's also fairly old, so who knows, but I think that as long as he's president, the points that Ta-Nehisi Coates made there are really important points, and I'm glad he was on Meet the Press to make those points. I think I got clips 16 and 20 messed up. I have to switch them around here because it's actually clip 20 where Chuck Schumer talks about how he thinks that what Donald Trump did in his tweeting was bad, and that what he's doing in Puerto Rico is inadequate. And Chuck Schumer was the only one to mention this comparison between what happened in Haiti, which was not an American territory, and what's happening in Puerto Rico. And I will talk about that with you after we watch that 2-minute clip from CBS's Face the Nation over here.
Leader Chuck Schumer. Senator, I want to start on Puerto Rico. There's been a lot of criticism of the federal response, but the administration and Marco Rubio have said Puerto Rico is a special case. It's not like Texas and Florida. There were existing challenges in Puerto Rico, a weak electrical grid, those kinds of things that are really a part of evaluating what's happening there.
Well, first of all, the president, instead of tweeting against the mayor of San Juan, who's watching her people die and just made a plea for help, ought to roll up his sleeves and get to work here. The bottom line is, at least for the first week and a half, the effort has been slow-footed, disorganized, and not adequate. And that's not just me saying it. General Buchanan said he doesn't have enough troops or material. The acting secretary of HHS, Duke, when she visited, said that things are not good. And so the bottom line is that we need more help. Marco Rubio is right, we need control and command. That means many more military troops. Let me give you an example. In Haiti, there were 22,000 troops after 2 weeks here. Right now, there are 10,000. There haven't been 10,000, and those are very, very recent. So this has not been a good response. It needs the president to stop calling names, stop downgrading the motives of people who are calling for help, but roll up his sleeves and get to work. And by the way, he should have gone to Puerto Rico earlier than 2 weeks. He'll go Tuesday. That's good. But 2 weeks after it hit. He was in Texas twice after that. Obama was up at Sandy 2 days afterwards. They say, oh, there are logistics that get in the way. But the president going makes a huge difference, and logistics didn't get in the way in the past.
Well, I guess they would argue that Puerto Rico is just a much different case than Florida or Texas. But let's move on here to Texas.
John Dickerson really seems to be holding up the Democrat side there, or the Trump administration side, talking to the Senate Minority Leader, one of the highest-ranking Democrats there, Chuck Schumer. And I give kudos to Chuck Schumer for being like the one person on the Sunday shows to mention these stats I saw on MSNBC last Friday. Apparently there's more troops now just in the last day or two. It's maybe 10,000 troops, but it's the helicopters and to get over the roadblocks, and then the troops to break through the roadblocks and to set up telecommunications and the electrical grid. That's going to take months, but that is, like I said, the last clip on the topic of Puerto Rico. Along the way, I did see there were a couple super chat contributions, 2 different $2 contributions that I really appreciate. I really not only thank you for the appreciation, and I appreciate my live viewers, those who can contribute super chat and those who can't. And also, as I promised, I'm going to show you this bonus Sandy clip. If I can, this is during the show earlier. I got Sandy to look up for. This is like a 4-second clip, the bonus Sandy clip of the week. Here you go, your bonus Sandy clip for 4 seconds. And now I'm going to get into my last topic, where I have the last 4 clips. This is on Donald Trump's tax plan, which He didn't give out a lot of details, but it looks like it's a big tax cut for the rich. And I actually thought ABC's George Stephanopoulos did the best job of emphasizing how it's a big tax cut for the rich. I didn't even take the Meet the Press clip where Steve Mnuchin was on because Chuck Todd did a really bad job of, he didn't really show the numbers of like how the supposed tax plan, which has very few details revealed, actually affects people. But over on ABC's This Week, George Stephanopoulos used the numbers from the, well, first he used this clip of Donald Trump saying that he wouldn't benefit, and then he used the numbers from, I think, the Tax Policy Institute, and also started to follow up with this idea that Donald Trump needs to release his tax return so we know, and especially on the estate tax, it's obvious that Trump will benefit, as I will discuss after we watch. This is a little under 5 minutes. I edited it down so it only has the most relevant parts from ABC, like I said this morning, over here.
Our framework includes our explicit commitment that tax reform will protect low-income and middle-income households, not the wealthy and well-connected. They can call me all they want. It's not going to help. I'm doing the right thing, and it's not good for me, believe me.
President Trump on Wednesday touting his tax plan. Let's take it now to the President's Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, joining us this morning. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning. We just heard the President right there. Also, you and your colleagues have said the wealthy will not get a tax cut under the plan, but it's really hard to see how that can possibly be true given the fact that your plan proposes cutting the top rate, eliminating the estate tax, eliminating the alternative minimum tax, cutting that rate on pass-through entities. And the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center calculates that 80% of the benefits will flow to the top 1%. We're going to show that chart right now. Almost every group getting a tax cut, but the wealthiest getting the most. That's just a fact, isn't it?
George, first of all, it's great to be with you this morning. And no, that's not a fact. As we release the details of the plan, we'll show all the different impacts to different people. And as the president has said all along, the changes to the income tax system are meant to create middle-income tax cuts and also make corporate and business tax competitive so we can bring back tons and tons of jobs and capital to this country.
I know that's the objective, but based on the evidence you've put out so far, all those cuts I just talked about, that will benefit the wealthiest the most.
Well, George, I just don't think that's the case. As we've talked about, changes in the top bracket are offset with elimination of almost every single type of deduction other than charitable giving and the mortgage interest deduction. And, you know, this has impacted different people in different states. But again, we'll go through all the details as we go through the congressional process of the House and the Senate, and we'll show all the distributions. And as relates to pass-throughs, this is about creating jobs. A huge component of the businesses in this country are pass-throughs, and we want to make sure they have the necessary tax relief to go out and hire more workers and invest more capital.
You know, Secretary, I just don't understand how you can say, based on everything you've put out so far, that it's not a tax cut for the wealthy. Even the vice president has said these are across-the-board tax cuts. The wealthy pay most of the taxes. They are getting tax cuts there. They are going to get benefits.
Well, George, in the high-tax states, the impact is about 5 or 6%. So if we cut the rate down to 35%, that's actually an increase for the wealthy in the high-tax states. And as we've said, we're considering what we do if there is a need for a fourth bracket to create more relief. So this will all continue to go through the congressional process.
But eliminating the estate tax will only go to the wealthiest Americans. Those have estates greater than $11 million.
Well, you are correct in that sense. And again, we've been talking about the income tax system. As it relates to estate tax, you know, the death tax, we believe that people get taxed once and not twice, and that will enable to keep lots of family businesses
passed along. But the estate tax, you are correct. The majority of this estate tax is paid by the wealthy. So we're focused on changes to the income tax system.
But you've proposed eliminating the estate tax. So I want to go to the benefits for President Trump personally, because he himself has said that he's not going to benefit from this tax plan. Again, that's hard to see how that's true, given the estate tax, the elimination of the AMT, which has benefited the president in the past, the cut in the top rate, but also we talked about these pass-through entities. And based on the president's financial disclosure form just from this year, we want to put it up right now, he had about more than $500 million in taxable income from those pass-through entities, taxed at 39.6%. You cut that to 25, that's a savings of $75.7 million based on the president's financial disclosure form last year.
George, as we said all along, as we change the pass-through rate, it's very, very important that we have guardrails around those rules. So exactly as you said, this isn't about creating a tax cut for the rich. So we spent a lot of time with the staff at the House and Senate. We're continuing to work on those rules, but we're going to make sure that that's not a way that the rich can use to pay lower taxes than they should, whether it's the president or anyone else.
Well, based on last year's form, he would have gotten that benefit. So how are Americans going to know whether or not the president gets this benefit if he doesn't release his tax returns?
George, that's just not fair because, again, we haven't published the rules as to what's going to apply to the pass-through rate, so you're making certain assumptions that I don't think are correct.
And that's about as much double talk from the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, as I can bear. Along the way, I got several Super Chat contributions, which I appreciate. I saw Talcott Douglas gave me, I think it's that 300 Argentine pesos. I think that's like $17 US, so that's a nice contribution. And some others, I saw there was some Canadian Sandy bucks there from Skelly Cruz, so I appreciate that. But that's just a little bit of income. It's not $129,000 like the top 1% are going to get in the first year of the Trump tax cut, apparently, although Steve Mnuchin wouldn't cop to that. And that was a very long, arduous, difficult to listen to clip from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, but I thought George Stephanopoulos did the best job showing the numbers, which is why I showed that clip. Over the other Republican I want to show trying to defend this tax cut is the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and the the confrontational question from John Dickerson on CBS's Face the Nation does point out that they've set in stone all the stuff for the rich people, and then how the middle class people are going to benefit, that's like details to be worked out later. But Paul Ryan, I think, does a little bit better job than Steve Mnuchin in the 1 minute, a little over 1 minute clip defending the Trump tax cut over here.
I'm pitching this as a middle-class tax cut, and you say every child in America should have an opportunity in this country, and that's been part of the American dream. But there are specifics in this. You're getting rid of the estate tax. The earned income tax credit is not being expanded. It might be in the future. The carried interest loophole is still in there. If I'm looking at this and I'm a middle-class person, I'm thinking the estate tax people are taken care of. The alternative minimum tax, which will help the wealthy, that's getting taken care of. But the things that will help me, those are till later.
Can I get through that? We're going to double your standard deduction so you can file your taxes on a postcard. We're going to take people who are in the 10% bracket and put a lot of that money in a 0% tax bracket. We're taking the 15% bracket down to 12%. We're going to get rid of the marriage penalty. We're going to increase the child tax credit. We're going to maintain critical things like incentives for home buying, charitable giving,
but you know, when people
education
look at this,
savings, retirement savings.
But when people,
those are all, just give me, those are all middle-class tax things. The purpose of this is to help people who are living by a paycheck keep more of their own hard-earned money, but also get more jobs, a faster-growing economy.
Let me ask you about the theory behind...
And that was all the follow-up from John Dickerson. I mean, there was a little bit of confrontation in that question, but he let the Speaker of the House there, Paul Ryan, get away with like slogans instead of, numbers, and that's what's really missing in this plan is numbers. And I think the best critique of this plan... Well, there are two really good critiques, one from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and then one from Senator Bernie Sanders. But the most rigorous critique, I think, came from Chuck Schumer, the more emotionally satisfying critique, I think, is from Bernie Sanders. I guess that's sort of their different wings of the party. I mean, Bernie Sanders isn't even in the party, but and this is, like I said, I had to switch this. 16 and 20 were switched somehow in the order, so this is actually clip 16 with, again, John Dickerson talking to Chuck Schumer about are you going to be bipartisan? And Chuck Schumer points out the three really good reasons why Democrats are not going to be bipartisan on this tax plan. And then there's even like an extra reason at the end, an extra point at the end that I will talk about after we watch that clip together over here.
Move on here to tax reform quickly. You've been talking to the president about making deals with the president. Is this something you can do a deal with the president on?
Well, look, we Democrats sent a letter to the Republican leadership and the president, said that here were three things that we thought tax reform ought to have. One, tax breaks ought not to go to the top 1%, but ought to be focused on the middle class. Two, it ought not blow a hole in the deficit. And three, it ought to be done in a bipartisan way, not through reconciliation. Unfortunately, the Republican plan doesn't agree with any of those. First, it's completely focused on the wealthy and the powerful, not on the middle class. Second, it blows a huge hole in the deficit. And third, they said they're going to do it through reconciliation. That's a partisan process. It excludes Democrats. It's the same process that led to the demise on health care. And let me just address one thing, John. Speaker Ryan keeps saying it helps the middle class. That's not true. What he's saying and what the plan is are totally different. Let me go over three quick points. One, they get rid of the estate tax. The only people who benefit are the very wealthy, estates over $11 million. 5,000 estates will get over $3 million each. Second, they lower the top rate from 39 to 35. That affects the wealthy. They raise the lowest rate from 10 to 12. That affects working people.
But that also knocks a lot of people off the rolls, Senator. People no longer have to pay taxes, which means that's good for them.
No, they already don't have to pay taxes, but to lower the top rate and raise the bottom rate does not make any sense at all. And third, here's what the Tax Policy Center, 80% of the tax breaks in their plan are aimed at the top 1%. And the top 0.1%, the people who make over $5 million, who are 1 in 1,000, get a tax break of over $1 million. The middle class, at the same time, is hurt. Just one more point here. The Achilles heel of this, the first one, there are many, is state and local deductibility. In suburban, fairly well-off districts, Republican, throughout the states like New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey, those people, even with the standard deduction, will pay a lot more.
But why
It'll be a real test of their
Alabama?
Congresspeople. It should be a real test of their Congresspeople, whether they vote with their constituents or they vote with the hard right ideology against state and local deductibility.
Well, the argument on state and local is why should Alabama subsidize New York? But it sounds like you're basically out now to stop this bill.
And you can see there that John Dickerson is using the Republican argument to cross-examine the Senate Democratic minority leader, Chuck Schumer, which I guess that's good journalism, although I think that, like I said, Face the Nation this week left out a really rigorous questioning of anyone or reporting on some of the nastier things Donald Trump said about the Puerto Ricans. But I think Chuck Schumer did a good job there of having all the important talking points, attacking the tax plan from the Republicans and Trump, even more rigorous and extensive than what George Stephanopoulos did when he was questioning Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. And he even added that point at the end, which is an important political point when you're trying to figure out whether the tax plan is going to pass, where he talked about how they're getting rid of the tax credit that people get for paying state taxes, which in high tax states like California or New York, I live in California, I get my state taxes deducted off my federal taxes, so I would lose that deduction. And what Chuck Schumer's saying is there are Republicans California has a lot of Democrats, but there are Republicans from California, there are Republicans from New York and Illinois, and the other high tax states where the big losers are in the Trump tax plan, or where you would otherwise be a winner based on how rich you are, but you become a loser because of the lack of state tax deductibility. So what are the Republicans from New York and California and Illinois? Are they going to stick with Donald Trump, or are they going to represent their constituents who are going to lose out because of this lack of state tax deductibility? So that's like an interesting little political calculation, which you would expect from a real politician and a political strategist like the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. The more emotionally satisfying argument, like I said, is in this last clip from the former presidential candidate who lost out to Hillary Clinton, who I voted for in the primaries. As I've said many times, in the California primary, I voted for Senator Bernie Sanders, not for Hillary Clinton, although I did end up voting for Hillary Clinton in the general election. So not my fault that Trump is president, and not my fault that Hillary was the nominee. I can say not my fault in both cases. And here's the emotionally satisfying argument from Bernie Sanders as to why we should oppose the Donald Trump tax plan. Not as rigorous as Chuck Schumer's criticisms, but like I said, emotionally satisfying, as I will discuss with you after we watch the final clip for tonight over here.
Tax plan, the president wants to double the standard deduction so that a married couple won't pay any taxes on the first $24,000 of income. Is that a provision of the president's tax plan that you might be able to support?
It is. But overall, I just listened to Mr. Mulvaney, who says that nobody can make an analysis long-term of what this tax proposal does. He's wrong. The Tax Policy Institute has said that 80%, Jake, at the end of 10 years, 80% of the benefits will go to the top 1%. So it's not just that they want to repeal the estate tax, which benefits only the top 0.2%. Families like the Walton family or the Koch brothers family will receive tens and tens of billions of dollars in tax breaks. For Trump to go on television and say, oh, this doesn't benefit the wealthy is absolutely outrageous. Of course it benefits the wealthy. And of course it benefits large multinational corporations. Right now, we are living in a moment of massive income and wealth inequality. The very, very rich are getting richer. Middle class is shrinking. What this tax proposal does is not only give huge tax breaks to the wealthy and large corporations, it cuts Medicare by $450 billion. Some listeners, some viewers may remember the Trump campaign. Oh, I'm not going to touch Medicare. $450 billion cut in Medicare, $1 trillion cut in Medicaid. This is the Robin Hood principle in reverse. Trump is taking from the middle class and working families in order to give huge tax breaks to the people on top. It is unacceptable, and we're going to fight it as hard as we can.
The president and Mick Mulvaney, the budget director, say that the middle class will get a huge tax cut, that's where the focus is going to be. You would oppose that bill if there are also benefits to the wealthy as well? What's the cutoff point beyond which you think...
Well, there's no huge...
Yeah, go ahead.
It is possible that some people, depending on the standard deduction and depending on the earned income tax credit and how many children you have in your family, it is possible that some middle-class families may make some gains. But when you have a nonpartisan group telling us that at the end of 10 years, 80% of the benefits go to the top 1%, when there are massive cuts in health care and in education and programs desperately needed by the working people of this country. No, the framework of this proposal is not something we can support. The truth is, right now, that the wealthiest people in this country are doing phenomenally well, and it is time we ask them to start paying their fair share of taxes, not give them tax breaks in order to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and other important programs.
Senator Sanders, stick around. We have...
So, yeah, that was definitely my favorite clip on the whole tax issue from the Sunday morning news shows this morning. I think my favorite clip on the Puerto Rico issue was the Ta-Nehisi Coates clip that actually wasn't specifically on Puerto Rico. It was more on white supremacy, which I think kind of underlies the whole Trump reaction to the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I appreciated the 200 or so of you who showed up to keep me company while I gave this did the live broadcast. I also appreciate all the super chat contributions. This is the final list I came up with So thanks for all the Super Chat contributors there. That definitely, I think my ad revenue did go up a little bit on last week's video. I think it went up from about 5% monetized to almost 50%. There was like a 36-hour period where it was unmonetized and I had to appeal it, and then it was manually reviewed and remonetized, and I don't know if that's going to happen every week or whatever. I guess we'll find out as the weeks go on, but I appreciate all of you who contribute through the Super Chat contributions, who support me just through the showing up for the live broadcast or posting supportive comments during the recorded show. And of course, I especially appreciate my monthly subscribers through Patreon. There's a link down to Patreon down in the video description. That's like the revenue I can depend on, and it's actually become about 3/4 of my monthly revenue at this moment comes from the Patreon patrons, not from YouTube, even with all the great Super Chat contributions. So thanks for that, and I will continue spending 8 to 10 hours every Sunday putting this show together and giving you my commentary and criticism, and of course the best, most newsworthy, informative clips for this fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you every Sunday. I may have some cause to create a edited, produced video sometime in October. That would be nice. Whether I do that or not, I can't promise, but I can promise that I will be back every Sunday, or sometimes a little bit late, but most Sundays it's on Sunday, and giving you my Sunday live clip roundup with Sandy, who just sort of moved a little bit over there, but now she's done, and now I guess I'm done, and I will see all of you next week. And until then, I guess I'll just see all of you around the internet.